Good afternoon and welcome to a special edition of Liverpool Life Reports. Mark Carney is one of the most important people in the country at the moment as the Governor of the Bank of England. This afternoon he'll be delivering the Roscoe Lecture here at Liverpool, and he's joined us now for an exclusive interview. Governor Carney, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nathan.
A report released just a couple of days ago is showing that the UK is one of the greatest regional differences in wealth of any country in Europe. That's from your chief economist. What measures do you think the bank can do to help areas like Liverpool?
Well, it's actually I recommend the speech, Red Card, Blue Card, by Andy Haldane, who's chief economist, as you say, at the bank. And he does draw out these big regional differences. Here in the Northwest, notably below the levels of wealth and income, for example, in the Southeast. Now, then the question is, what can be done about that? From the Bank of England's perspective, we can do a bit. We can provide some of the foundations. We keep inflation under control and make sure the financial system works. But the big aspects, the big things that will make a difference, which will raise the levels of well-being, of productivity, of wealth here in Liverpool, Merseyside, beyond, have to be done by other levels of government, so not the bank. We provide some of the basics, but not the big things that will help close the gap.
Are you worried that the Brexit vote is going to hinder investment into the north of England?
Well, I think we have to look at it as an opportunity. It's a decision of the people of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. It's important that this process of determining what the new relationship will be with Europe is as smooth and as orderly as possible, and that businesses here in the Northwest and across the country can plan with as much certainty as possible for not just that new relationship with Europe, but potentially new ones with the United States, with Canada, Australia, China, the big emerging economies of the world. That's what will bring investment on. This process will create a number of changes, and it's up to all of us to make them as positive as possible.
You've reported in the past that following the Brexit vote, you want to see a transitional period. Could you explain more what that would look like?
Well, it's an issue. I think it's best explained for heavily regulated sectors such as the financial services sector, or let's say pharmaceuticals sectors, drug rules and patents and things. And the important thing is that the Prime Minister and the UK government is going to be involved in very difficult negotiations over the course of the next couple of years with the European partners. The question is, what happens at the end of those negotiations? Some things will change, some will remain the same. Are businesses going to be able to take advantage of those changes, adjust to those changes overnight? Because the way these negotiations work, everything doesn't come together until the last minute, in fact, the last second. The expression in trade deals is nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So the idea is that once everything is agreed, business would have a bit of time to restructure, reorient, invest, and move forward. Now, that's an ideal. That's the best for the financial services sector, for pharma, even for autos, other sectors like that. Whether that's possible, given all the other things that the government has to negotiate and set priorities for, remains to be seen. So it's one element, but we leave it to the government to determine what's right, what's necessary, what's in the best interest.
When you became governor in 2011, did you expect the economy to be where it is today?
Well, the economy since I actually arrived, and it's not down to me, but since I arrived, the economy has done very well. It's been the strongest growing economy in the G7, so of the major nations. It has the highest level of employment ever. More people are at work than there ever have been in the past. And wages have finally begun to grow. So lots of positive things have happened. So if you asked me then, would I be happy with that outcome? The answer would be pretty much. Where I'm less happy is around the level of productivity in the economy and the fact that wage growth itself hasn't continued to pick up. And then more broadly, where I would be less happy, and certainly people, whether they're here in Merseyside, across the country, are less happy, is around broader issues about the security of work, uncertainty about the future. You asked questions about Brexit, it's understandable. And they know they have work today, not everybody, but most people do. But what kind of jobs are they going to get tomorrow? What kind of, what's the media landscape going to be for you, Nathan, in years to come? And are you being equipped with the skills that you need to? Now, if I may, you're fortunate, you're here, John Moores, so you are being equipped for those skills, but not everybody has access to that type of training and retraining, reskilling, if you will, that is necessary for the modern economy. So those are some bigger issues, not issues for the Bank of England, but issues that we need as a country as a whole to address.
Speaking, going back to Brexit, do you think that the Brexit has portrayed Britain from a business point of view as a very inward-looking, self-serving country to the outside world?
It depends on where we go with it. The strategy is to strike trade deals with other countries, while maintaining as much access to the common market, the European market, as possible. And as the government achieves that, if it achieves that, then that reinforces the historic nature of this economy and, and this port. I mean, it's one of the things I'll mention this afternoon when I speak is that the Customs House here in the middle of the last century, the 19th century, was the single largest source of revenue for the entire country. That's just an indicator of how much commerce went through this port. So the tradition of the UK has been to be an open economy. This is an opportunity to reorient that openness, if you will, a bit less from Europe, a bit more to the rest of the world. And as progress is made on that, it will reinforce the reputation.
Do you think that there's something which is holding back the UK economy from growing at the moment, which a clear issue which is holding back productivity?
Well, one of the things that was holding back productivity was the financial sector. I mean, as you know, we had the big crisis, and the banks were in very bad shape. So one of the things I've been working on with colleagues has been to get those banks back on their feet, so that they can serve the real economy, the real businesses, if you will. And that is now the case. So that restriction on the economy, on productivity, is now gone. We have a bit of a restriction because of uncertainty, because we're waiting to see where these relationships are going to go. But that will go pretty soon. The big drivers of productivity now, and it goes back to that speech you referenced at the start of our interview, are about how do we get best practice in an industry, and we've got best practice in virtually every industry, examples of best practice in every industry here in the UK, and how do we spread that knowledge across firms so that those who are less well performing can come up to that higher standard. A lot of that's around training, some of it's around R&D. It shouldn't be about access to capital, which is what we've worried about and we think has been solved.
Why did you worry about access to capital?
Well, because we had a fundamental issue in that the financial institutions didn't have enough of their own capital and therefore were reluctant to lend. So we've addressed that. That's a core job of the Bank of England, is to make sure the system has what's known as financial stability. So we meet today. There are headlines out of Europe. Political events in Europe and some concerns around the implications of the political events. We want to be in a position, and we are in a position, where people here in Merseyside, across the country, think that that's interesting, but not relevant. Not relevant in terms of their day-to-day ability to go take a loan if they see the house that's right for their family, or to invest to start up their business.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. We're now going to ask some questions of these lovely student journalists in the audience. I'm going to start with one from Christella.
Hi, I understand that your cousins live locally and that's what led you to become an Everton fan.
Yes.
Do you get to see them play often, and what do you think of their latest performances?
Very good question. Yes, it's true. I've been an Evertonian since the late 1980s, when I first lived in the United Kingdom. I came up here and saw them. I saw them in the '89 FA Cup against Liverpool. So Ian Rush is forever burned on my brain, and two brilliant extra time goals for Liverpool to win it. I saw them in the semi-final of the FA Cup last year. And recent performances, they've been good. I think I join the manager in wishing they were slightly better. I'm glad they snatched the point yesterday, but I think we can do. I think we will do better. Let's put it that way, in terms of not dropping points unnecessarily.
Paige Freshwater.
As the Governor of the Bank of England, I'm sure you've faced and overcome many problems, but did the recent controversy of the animal fats in the new £5 notes take you by surprise?
Well, it did. It's a good question. It did take us by surprise. It's not. We were unaware of it, and one of the core things with the central bank is to be open, accountable, transparent. So a member of the public had asked us about this. It actually took us about a month to track down the answer because we went to our main supplier and said, "Are there any animal fats?" And they said, "No, we don't think." And then they said, "Wait a minute, we don't think so." And then they went to their suppliers and their suppliers and discovered that there were these traces. Now, to go back to football, the amount that's in the note, from what we can tell, is the equivalent of if you filled Wembley Stadium 3 times over and then asked one person to leave, it's that amount. But the fact is there are these animal fats. It is a cause of concern for some people. We treat that with, we respect those concerns. We treat it with seriousness. And so now we're working with our suppliers to find out what the options are. So the short answer is yes, a surprise. But we weren't going to withhold that information. We let everyone know as soon as we knew. And now we're trying to take action to see what we can do about it.
We've got time for one more question. Kieran Simpson.
Hi. The government's own investigations concluded that the national debt will be at $2 trillion by 2020. What do you think you, as like the Bank of England, can do to try and rectify this situation? And what does it mean for future generations, like suffering because of our current borrowing?
Yeah. Well, it's the government's been in a difficult position since the financial crisis. So. To put some numbers around it, immediately after Northern Rock, let's say, so 2009, the deficit was almost 12% of GDP, so big number. And they've been working to get that down. It's down around 3.5% of GDP now. But it still means that they're building debt. And as you referenced, they expect to get to that £2 trillion figure by 2020. The issue is, what are they using the debt for? And is it helping to build the productive capacity of the economy for future generations? And I don't speak for the government, but I'll just sort of quote that the discrete decisions, the individual decisions they made in the last autumn statement, the last budget, really have to do with productivity. So it's about building infrastructure and it's about investing in R&D. So they're making decisions to help close that gap that Nathan was, to which he was referring earlier. And that should give some comfort to future generations. From the Bank of England's perspective, what you asked, we just take that government policy as given. It's their decision, they're elected. We then have to set monetary policy to try to support the economy accordingly. And it's been a big headwind against the economy. That's why we've had rates as low as they have been.
Well, I think that's all we've got time for. Can we all just thank Governor Mark Carney of the Bank of England?
Thank you very much. Okay.